different on their individual slides, but do we have any questions about the general dynamics of the EHL market?
One thing to also underscore is on the right-hand graphic, these are of course the EHL switch dynamics. We don't see hardly any SBROC switch losses, right? I mean, there's only just a couple. Granted, if there's an intra-quarter switch loss, where the patient switches back to what he was on before SBROC, that's not going to be captured because it's not fully, it's not technically a quarter out switch. I don't think there's been that many of them, but quarter in, quarter out, we're not seeing hardly any SBROC switch aways. In other words, the retention level, we can call it that, retention level is extraordinarily high. Of course, some of this is because those that are switched to SBROC are being switched within the Hemlibra phase, of course, whereas those that are switching away, I would dare say that most of those EHL switch-aways that are not going to SBROC, that are going to Hemlibra, these are Elocta patients that were switched years and years ago. These were earlier adopters of Elocta.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, Michelle.
And that actually, I'll be talking about that quite a bit more on the Elocta side, but first, looking at SBROC, on the left we have our patients that have switched to SBROC by brand, and on the right we have the total source of business. And what we did see in Q4 is that dip in Elocta patients as a percentage of SBROC switches. We go from 22, 20%, 26% down to 10%, which actually does account for a lot of the dip in switches as we're talking about, or potential switches. As Ryan mentioned, patients were switching over to Hemlibra now that they had the chance. I actually have a good illustration of that in a quote on the next slide, but what I do want to point at is what we have here are quite a few on-demand patients. We have the SHL patients that didn't want to switch to Elocta because they didn't necessarily see much of a benefit going from infusing once a day to once every other day, or they're on-demand patients that are transitioning to SBROC specifically because it shortens hospital days, or they only need 1 or 2 treatments. So what we have from the hematologist here is it's become even cheaper to treat bleeds or undertake surgeries with SBROC than with an EHL. If a surgery is being done here, I prefer to use an EHL because it keeps patients safe and hospital stays short. If it's being done at another hospital, I might use Advate or NovoEight because surgeons are familiar with them. That is one area that SBROC can potentially gain, and those are at the smaller centers where some surgeries might be done. Actually, we did probe into benefits and why. Just taking a bit of a departure, because I remember you asked in the Q3 walkthrough, why are they still using benefits? And a lot of the same reason is why they're still using Advate or NovoEight at the smaller centers. Hematologists don't trust surgeons very much to follow their protocols. What they are hoping, however, is that as there's increased familiarity with SBROC, they'll be able to slowly send that through to the smaller centers as well.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's really good insight actually for us. That 15 out of 40 were on-demand patients, and I could see Dorian smiling because when we're doing our forecasting and things like that, and volumes per patient, that makes a dramatic difference. It's not a bad thing. We want the on-demand patients as well, but it does completely skew our volume forecasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Switching over to the infamous Elocta that we've touched on quite a bit. Again, what we're seeing is the Elocta patient switch profile, and even though Elocta has been consistently getting, especially pediatric patients that are switching over to SHLs, its losses have been accelerating throughout 2021. And for the first time since SBROC, essentially since SBROC's first full quarter on the market,